everyone, and welcome to another episode right here on Revv Inspirations,
Dar.
and Rene. It's really been a busy week in the financial markets, and also with a lot of things going on in different countries. And I think, what did you mention? There's something happening in the US with the recent Fed rates.
Recently the US raised interest rates again for the 10 times in a row.
10 times?
10 times,
10 times.
Since year 2022.
Wow, okay. So, with the Fed interest rate hikes, there's something which I think a lot of people will be very interested in, which is inflation.
Yep,
which is
inflation.
Our topic for today. All right, and I've got a whole bunch of questions for Dar, and of course, inflation being something related to something that we talked about in our last episode, which was recession as well, right? So, I think these two subjects are kind of correlated. So, the questions that I have for you, my very first question is, what is inflation, and are we living in inflation now?
Yes, we are, because interest rates are rising, food prices are increasing, and our living costs are also increasing. So we're in inflation. But let me explain a little bit more.
Yes.
Remember the last two episodes we were talking about recession, right?
Yep.
That is a forecast that we are looking at recession in the second half of this year 2023. But before the recession strikes, all right, we are actually now moving toward inflation first. So it's after inflation, then we see the recession. Right, we are inflation now.
Okay, but bro, as I mentioned, what is inflation? To a lot of people, they're not familiar. They've been hearing a lot that term inflation. But what is actually inflation?
Okay, what is actually inflation? That means, as I mentioned earlier, rising interest rates, food prices going up. But many times we are seeing actually a fictitious inflation.
What is fictitious inflation?
Okay, for example, since year 2020, we have been struck by the coronavirus impact on a global basis. And due to the COVID, right, we have seen the shipping freight coming to a standstill.
Right.
We have seen the farming production also stop because of shortage of labors, and that actually caused the prices to go up. So it is more or less very fictitious. However, nobody has expected this inflation to last for 3 years, which actually caused the whole world into quite a turmoil now.
Okay, and and my next question, I guess, is also related. I guess, what causes an inflation? Very important question. What causes inflation?
Okay, that is quite a tough question.
Tough, but I think it's no problem for you.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, as I want to recap on what I mentioned earlier, food prices going up, living costs going up.
Right.
But then the good thing is our personal income should also increase moderately.
Yeah, you'd be expecting that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So this is for us to capture and able to contain the living costs, able to live comfortably,
Right.
So what actually causes that? And if you're talking about food prices going up, as I mentioned, because production has been reducing. But one very important thing is due to climate change.
Right.
So weather changes actually cause the farming cultivation to slow down in the production. I think this is something we should be paying attention.
Right. So in just let me kind of recap to your answer. So it's really not only about economy, but also environmental
things,
factors that
fundamentals,
cause
financially,
causes inflation as well.
Yep.
All right. And this one I think is a question which is something that everybody's going to be sitting up to, and how to make our money grow in inflation economy. Especially a lot of people want to know, what stock should I buy, or what bond should I go into. So what kind of how do we make our money grow in inflation?
My brother, Rene, you always throw a stone at me, huh?
Okay, I have to, man.
Okay, that's a good question.
Yes.
A little bit tough, but not too tough for me.
Right.
Well, I think in the inflation, it's important to make money. I'll be the inflation and be the winner. All right. Sure. And how to get this extra money is never from your work or from your regular income.
Okay.
All right. So it's from how to invest wisely.
Okay.
Okay. And how to actually get extra money is on the inflation, right? Initial part, we always see the major stock indexes going up. For example, like the Dow Jones, and S&P, Nasdaq, FTSE, even the Hong Kong, Hang Seng, or even STI in Singapore. Right. So go into all these stocks, okay? Do some homework, extract all the component stocks that are contained in the index, all right?
Okay.
And out of these component stocks, as I mentioned, do some homework, okay? Look at which are the good mining stocks and food producing stocks, all right, in the inflation, because food prices are going up.
People want to eat. People have to eat, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So extract all these good stocks, all right, based on all this few business nature. Then get those that has got a little debt or zero debt in the company and with good revenue. Then every quarter they release good earning per share, we call it EPS.
Okay.
All right, and of course they pay good dividend. these are all the potential stocks that will rise. So put your money in all these stocks, and you could be making some money.
Okay, what about things like, as I call it, risky assets, things like your bitcoins and your cryptocurrencies, which everybody seems to be wanting to get into.
Right.
These are
all the high risk assets,
right.
Or we can even call them the alternate investment vehicle. All right. So not only Bitcoin, which we call the cryptos, we also refer to things like wine. It's very unbelievable, but you spend $50,000 on a bottle of wine.
I've heard that, man.
And people actually spend money to collect all these wines. And also we are talking about the art piece collection, all these things. Well, in the inflation, it is true that all these high risk assets do move in the prices. They increase, very volatile. But then again, I want to warn all of you, be very cautious, because it is very volatile. It could actually cause a lot of damages to your investment portfolio. So don't go into all these market or instruments unless you're an expert and you know them very well.
Yes,
and able to control risk.
Right, because I know I've heard a lot of horror stories about people diving into cryptos and bitcoins and just getting bankrupt overnight because the market just flipped over and
But having said that, of course, there are people that make big money, but there are also people that lose big money.
Exactly. So I think bottom line is be very careful with how you invest, and always, and even for me personally, I mean, I only invest in money that I have to spare, not in my savings, because that is really something dangerous that you don't want to kind of get into. All right. So now let's move on to my next question, which is, what is REITs?
REITs, all right, REITs.
Yes.
Okay. Just now we talk about high risk asset. Now we talk about REITs. REITs is a very steady income investment vehicle, which stands for Real Estate Investment Trust.
Okay.
All right, and not many people know that Singapore is actually one of the biggest REIT market in Asia. All right, and REIT actually refers to a bulk of properties being grouped together into an index. All right, and when you invest in this index, you actually become a co-owner of all these properties. Okay. But how do people make money? It's because in Singapore, okay, there's a regulation that once you lease your group of properties as a REIT index into the exchange, all right, the owner has to pay out 90%, okay, 90% of the net profit every year as a dividend to all your investors. So on the average level, every REIT counter in Singapore pays out on an average about 5 to 6%. Of course, there are some higher than some lower.
That's better than the banks, man.
Exactly. So remember those days when banks are paying 0%, 0.5 or 1%. That's when people pour money into the REITs and they earn about 5-6% a year. It's wonderful.
Right. Yeah. And talking about, folks, I think that's about all the time that we have for you right here on Revv's Inspiration for Inflation. Don't forget to watch our next episode where we'll be talking about housing tax,
and actually how are we going to contain these risks, and most importantly, how can we make some money out of it?
Right. So if you have any questions, do remember to drop either myself or Dar your questions, and we'll do our very best to answer you on our next episode right here on
Dar
and Rene.